Welcome to Life in the Fast Lane, your weekly NASCAR handicapping show. I am your host, Steve Merril, and I'm joined by my NASCAR experts, as always, Andy Lang from WagerTalk.com and Rocky Atkinson from SportsMemo.com. By the way, we'll get to this quite often throughout the show, but these two guys were a perfect 5-0 last night on Thursday with their best bets on those two websites. Now, I told you when we did our first show about a week and a half ago, these guys started 5-1 on that Sunday Darlington race, and unfortunately we didn't do our first show until the next Wednesday. I told many of you are going to be kicking yourselves for not getting on board. Well, guess what? They went 5-0 last night, and it just shows it's not too late to get on board. And because of that, we're going to do another special offer rest of the NASCAR season for either one of these guys, $249. That's a tremendous savings, $249 for the next 4.5 months of NASCAR. And you have until this Sunday when the race starts at Bristol to get on board. WagerTalk.com for Andy, SportsMemo.com from Rocky. I'll remind you about this. No promo code needed, by the way, guys. You just have to go to the website and sign up. $249 gets you the rest of the NASCAR season. We have about 4.5 months, maybe 5 months left in NASCAR. Yes, you missed a 5-0 sweep last night, but keep in mind a week ago you missed a 5-1 night. I told you it still wasn't too late, and it proves it. 5-0 last night. Plenty more NASCAR winners to come. We're going to get to some of those here in the show for Bristol in just a moment. But first, I want to recap the Charlotte race. As we predicted, it was rained out Wednesday night. We got it in on Thursday night. It was about half the distance of the 600. It was a pretty clean race. In fact, it was a fairly boring finish. You know, Harvick and Elliott passed Harvick with about 40 laps to go. Never looked back. I think we were all waiting for that caution flag or something crazy to happen for Chase Elliott, but he finally got the win. Could have been 3 straight. He had won the Truck Series a couple days before. He's as hot as anybody on the circuit. We're going to look at Bristol here a little bit, but first I want to recap Charlotte, guys. I'll start with you, Rocky. What were a couple of your takeaways last night? I know you had a 2-0 sweep at SportsMemo.com, and I know both of those were underdog picks. And I disagreed with you with Bowman over Harvick over Bowman. I liked Bowman. It was looking pretty good early in the race, but one thing I will say is Harvick is always a top 10 driver. Bowman is either a win it or top 20 maybe, and that was once again as he finished around the 30th, cut a tire running second, hit the wall for no reason. And that just shows the risk you play with these younger guys against a veteran like Harvick. So, Rocky, what were a couple of your thoughts on that Charlotte race last night?
Well, like you said, I went 2-0 with my premium picks. Very pleased about that. My free play cashed here on the show as well as I had Martin Truex Jr. finishing ahead of Alex Bowman. So that came through for us. Truex did not run good at all, really. So we were fortunate to get that win with Bowman hitting the wall. Chase Elliott had a great car all night. He got the win, and I'm happy he got the win after some real bad luck the past 2 races, once in Darlington and then in the Charlotte race. Harvick had the fastest car most of the race. He led 63 laps, but his car wasn't good at the end in the long run. So Bowman, Elliott, along with several other drivers passed him. He ended up finishing 10th when the checker flag waved. Bowman ran good again, but he hit the wall while running in second place, like you said, trying to catch Harvick. He finished back in 31st. I think we have to mention Denny Hamlin here in his second place finish. We discussed on the show Wednesday that people normally overreact when a team loses some crew members, as Hamlin did, as he lost 4 of his crew members for the next 4 races. Hamlin would have been a good play on driver, possibly with some very good odds. We also have to mention Ricky Stenhouse Jr. here. A 4th place finish for Stenhouse Jr. I think he's been watching our show maybe, got a little motivation, but an incredible job at a team with a solid finish.
Yeah, and I thought of Andy right away when Stenhouse was actually running 3rd at one point in that race pretty late, and I had to laugh to myself because can you imagine if he ends up winning this thing? And Andy had mentioned a few shows back, just blindly put a little sprinkle on him every night, every race this season, and you'll probably cash one of them, and that would have paid for the season right there. And I think, like you said, 4th is really tough because if you put a top 3 on him, he would have cost you by 1 spot, and that could very well be a Stenhouse Award nominee just for that reason alone. But, Andy, I'll get to you. Speaking of Stenhouse, what were your takeaways on Charlotte? I know you weren't big on Harvick along with myself. Rocky was bigger on him, and he was leading late, but I noticed he said after about 30 laps his car really dropped off, and That long green run at the end, obviously, is why he did fade back to 10th, as Rocky mentioned. Truex and Bowman were my top two picks. Truex wasn't as competitive as I thought he would be. He had a lot of trouble getting up from that back start, around the late teens, or he started middle of the pack and just never could work his way up as easily as Elliott did. But I thought it was ironic that he passed Harvick with about half a lap to go to get one spot ahead of him in that head-to-head matchup win. Andy, what were your thoughts overall in Charlotte? They will be back there, of course, in October, but it'll be the Roval, so it won't be quite like this track again.
This has been kind of a theme with Harvick. Those really, really long green flag runs at the end has really been his kryptonite. And not only did he fall off, he fell off immediately. He was running away with the race, and all of a sudden people were blowing by him. This has happened before the break a couple times where he's struggled with those long green flag runs. So Rocky and I went head to head. I had Bowman over Harvick. And he had Harvick over Bowman, which is a fascinating discussion over who was right on that one. Since if Harvick still loses his car and Bowman doesn't hit the wall, does Bowman finish ahead of him? But at the same time, Rocky's always said he doesn't trust Bowman, and Bowman basically wrecked by himself. So that was an interesting pick. My picks, my free pick that lost, Brad Keselowski blew a tire earlier in the race, and like Ninja Brad always does, he blows a tire, has damage on his car, comes out, the car is basically undrivable, and yet somehow at the end there he is chasing down people inside the top 10. An amazing job by him and his crew. He finished 2 seconds behind Logano. Those of you that have followed this show and then followed Premium Picks know I bet on Christopher Bell last night. That was one of my premium picks. He didn't have a great run, but he still beat Buescher. Thank God we had a shortened race, because if that race was 100 laps more, I think Buescher would have caught him. I cashed William Byron over Erik Jones. Byron had big damage when someone ran into him in the pits. Good job by his team to rally for a 10th place finish. It wasn't too eventful. I'm glad it was a shorter race, because they would have added another 100 laps to that style of racing on that track. That would have been a complete snooze fest. They lucked out with the length of the race. Congrats to Chase Elliott. And I just hope the people that have bet on Chase Elliott to win on the last race bet on him again, because boy, you got to be really mad if you bet on him when he pits and loses the lead and finishes second, and you don't cash, and then you say, well, I'm going to stay away from Elliott to win, and then you don't cash it last night. So hopefully everyone who bet on Elliott last time bet on him again last night.
Yeah, and Hendrick looked fast once again. Johnson goes from 40th up to 11th. Byron was running fast up front, but just like Bowman, finds a way to kind of screw up and fade back. And I think Chase Elliott is, of the four guys on that team, obviously Johnson's the over-the-hill veteran. Elliott is kind of the middle-of-the-pack veteran, not rookie anymore. And then you look at Bowman and you look at Byron, and I like Bowman over Harvick as well, yet I was concerned about fading Harvick, the most consistent intermediate track driver over the last decade, against a guy like Bowman, who's been as fast, if not faster than everyone this season, but is also inconsistent. And that's exactly how that played out. And that's the problem with the head-to-head matchups. I think guys like Bowman and Byron are almost better to play to win straight up, get 7-1 odds, 10-1 odds, because they're kind of like a Ricky Stenhouse almost. It's all or nothing. They either win the race or they finish 30th or 20th. And that's the thing with Bowman. I think he's a better guy to probably play to win outright at 7-1 in a lot of these races, as he will win several times this year. But just the other night he's running second most of the race and finished 19th in the 600 with only a couple laps to go. Elliott, though, does seem like he's turned the corner. He's a legitimate championship contender now. This is 3 straight races he could have won. So I'm very comfortable using him in head-to-heads. One guy, once again, that had a lot of problems was Kyle Busch. Obviously, he cut a tire, too, when he got into traffic. But he has not led a lap this season, guys, at a single track. It's just incredible. And we're going to lead into Bristol here in a moment, and he's been the best driver at Bristol. So I'm really looking forward to getting your thoughts on how we handle Busch this week. He's been underachieving all year, yet he's been fast at times, and now he's going to his best track overall. But yeah, we won't be at Charlotte again on the Oval. It'll be the Roval, so these results won't really mean much. Although Chase Elliott did win and Ryan Blaney did win on the Rovals, and they both ran top 3 last night. So maybe it translates a little bit because they do run half the race on this track. But keep in mind, bigger picture, all the viewers out there, this is a 1.5-mile cookie cutter intermediate speedway. About half the races on the circuit are this type of track. So a lot of good data still to take away from these 2 races at Charlotte and also the 2 at Darlington, as those 4 races really translate probably about half the tracks remaining on the schedule. So a lot of good data still to use. We're going to leave Charlotte behind. We're going to go to Bristol. First, I want to remind all the viewers out there, 5-0 sweep last night on Thursday between Andy and Rocky's Best Bets. Andy, of course, is at WagerTalk.com. Rocky's at SportsMemo.com. And Rocky's 2-0 sweep was not a fluke. He started 3-0 a couple Sundays ago to kick off the season at Sports Memo. He is now 63-33 overall the past 3 years in all of his NASCAR best bets. Both of his best bets last night on Thursday, plus money underdogs. So these guys aren't playing minus 180 favorites. He had plus money underdogs on both of them and went 2-0. Now 63-33 the last 3 years. You do the math, you figure out what you play, figure out how much you would have won just last night alone in the last 3 years combined. Yes, you missed a 5-0 sweep. That's the bad news. The good news, you still have over 4.5 months of NASCAR picks, and you can get them for $249 by this Sunday before the Bristol race. You got to sign up before Bristol this Sunday. Andy Lang's picks, WagerTalk.com, Rocky Atkinson's picks, SportsMemo.com. Special price, $249 for the complete NASCAR season. If you missed the 5-0 sweep last night, shame on you. Don't wait any longer. Get off the sidelines. Make some money. Watch these races. This is fun. Nothing is better, guys, than having some money on the line when you're watching NASCAR. It can get a little boring mid-race. Like Andy said, that 600 is a little long. But you got some wagers on the line. It's a lot of fun. It's a great sport to watch. It's a great sport to bet. Go to SportsMemo.com, WagerTalk.com, $249 get you the rest of the NASCAR season. These guys went 5-0 last night. Huge weekend coming up at Bristol for best bets as well. We're going to get to some free picks here. Now, look, it's Friday afternoon. We normally do this show midweek on Wednesday. There's normally just Sunday races. But because of the double race this week, we're doing this bonus episode on Friday. The matchups are not out yet at any sports books. The head-to-head odds, the outright winner odds aren't out. But we kind of know who's going to be favored, and we know the top 4 or 5 drivers are going to be. First, I'll start with you, Rocky. Give me your thoughts about Bristol, and also give me maybe a driver you're looking at to be a top 3 contender at Bristol. Oh, we need Stenhouse. I'm so sorry. I thought we weren't doing it this week because he ran so well. He ran 4th. You're right. I just, I feel bad picking the guy. I feel like we have to come up with another name this week, like the Kyle Busch Award or something, since
you feel bad picking on him. How would you feel if you were in 2nd and 4th when he's running 3rd?
You'd be very nervous, first of all. You'd be extremely nervous if he's anywhere around you running top 10 that late in the race. I'll be honest, guys. I don't have a lot of nominees. I'll say Kyle Busch. It's kind of a weak nominee just due to the fact he was in kind of traffic there when he cut his tire, so it really wasn't anyone's fault. But just the fact that he has not led a lap this season and just kind of finds a way not to be competitive, even with a very competitive team. So I'll throw out Kyle Busch. Andy, thank you for reminding me. I'll throw it to you first this week and see who your nominees are for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Award.
Okay, besides Kyle Busch, I actually have 4 of them. I never want to root for people to wreck, but I do always laugh when 2 teammates wreck into each other, and that happened right off the bat. Gase and Smithley wreck into each other. Just because you always got to think, if you're the owner watching your 2 guys bang into each other and take them out of the race real early, because then you got a long talk with the sponsors the next day. So I have that one. Nominee number 2, the first pit stop, Clint Boyer, too fast, penalty. 3rd pit stop, Clint Boyer, too fast. So, maybe slow down just a little bit, Clint. How can you not mention Alex Bowman? He's in 2nd place. He bangs into the wall. And then just to pile on, he's trying to chase down Harvick, and he overcooks it going to the turn. And if he would have just been patient, Harvick's car falls apart, and who benefits? His own teammate. So if he would have just been patient, he could have been the one waving the checkered flag instead of his own teammate. And then a real subtle one, my personal favorite, Erik Jones. He comes into the pits and he misses his stall. So he has to come in for a stop and go penalty. And what does he do? He blows by his stall again on the penalty. So whenever you can miss your stall twice in the span of 1 lap, you're definitely a nominee for the Ricky Stenhouse Unforced Error Award of the night. So yeah, that's my guy.
Yeah, like the Gay Smithley would be my vote of all those four. In fact, that was what I had circled last night. It happened so early, I forgot about it because it was so meaningless, obviously. These are two drivers that are never on anybody's radar, whether maybe you're trying to fill in that sixth spot of your fantasy team and you only have 4,500 left, might be the only time you have either one of them in the lineup. But yeah, I didn't even realize they were teammates until that happened last night. But that is a great nominee for the Stenhouse Award because by definition there was fire involved. And that, of course, is how the first race happened when Stenhouse Jr. once again caught on fire the first lap of the Darlington race last week, which kind of brought the idea of this award to fruit. But Rocky, give us a nominee or two and what your thoughts overall and who was the most deserving of the biggest blunder, I guess you could say, of the race.
All right. We'll go with William Byron. Not William Byron, the driver, but we're talking about the team here again. Byron had a good car all night long, finished well, but he got tangled up in the pits with Corey LaJoie. Byron only took 2 tires. He was trying to get out of his pit stall while LaJoie was coming into his. The cars hit. Byron suffered some minor damage. He was still fast, so it didn't hurt him much, but he very well could have been a lot faster. Communication was a factor in this happening. Not exactly Byron's fault, in my opinion, but somebody has to relay to him that guy pitting directly in front of him is coming in. So, I mean, he just a tough break there for him. But I also like the Joey Gase and the Garrett Smithley wreck on the first lap. I had that one marked down as well. I mean, teammates, like you said, the owner sitting back there just cringing as his 2 cars get together and crash out. I mean, just crazy.
I think we have a winner there.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the one we all agree on, and that would have been my pick. I'd forgotten all about that because I'd forgotten about the award. I try not to think about Stenhouse more than I have to, so you're going to have to keep reminding me each week, Andy. So I appreciate you calling the audible there because I completely forgot about the award. But, yeah, you know, for me, once again, like Beavis and Butthead would say, fire. You know, that fire is kind of an automatic winner for me. And, yeah, Smithley Gase, hey, look, they won something this year, guys, besides finishing 39th and 40th in the race last night. I guess we have to get a little trophy to send them because I have a feeling they have a lot of room on their trophy shelf at that shop. And my first thought was, do they even have another car to get ready in time for Bristol? Because basically 2 cars taken out on a team that probably has like 3 cars total. So Joey Gase, Garrett Smithley finished second to last and last, but they win as teammates the Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Award for the Charlotte 500K. And very fitting, I think. And that was a 3-0 sweep. You know, I was trying to figure out a way, guys, we could start determining the winners because we have so many good nominees. And if we get some more people in the chats each week, I think we can help them decide, help us decide as well. Just a reminder to all viewers, this show is normally Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. It's every Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern. This is a bonus episode here on Friday, May 29th, because we do have the Sunday race and we had a Wednesday night race. So we're doing a bonus episode. But the next couple weeks, we'll be here at the normal time Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern next week and the following Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. So this is a bonus Friday episode, a little extra NASCAR this week, which is always great. A great way to make some money, and it paid off for the viewers out there. Perfect 5-0 sweep on best bets from Andy and Rocky at sportsmemo.com, wagertalk.com. Once again, $249 gets you the rest of the NASCAR season. But you got to do it by this Sunday before the green flag drops at Bristol Motor Speedway. Speaking of Bristol, guys, this is a half-mile track. There are only 3 short tracks on the circuit. Martinsville and Bristol, both half miles. Richmond, my home track, a 3/4 mile. But be very careful, viewers out there, when you're handicapping this race. Don't look at the overall short track data because there really could be no bigger difference between Martinsville and Bristol. The only commonality is that they're both in the corner of Virginia/Tennessee, and they're both half miles, 0.53 miles to be exact. Bristol is closer to Daytona in terms of banking, the fastest track on the circuit. And Martinsville has 0 banking. I actually think Richmond is a closer analogy to Bristol because it has more banking. You could even say Dover, a concrete 1-mile track, is probably better to look at for Bristol than Martinsville. So be very careful. Do not use Martinsville when handicapping this race. Look at their Bristol data. Maybe look at Richmond or Dover. But it's a very unique track. And Rocky, what are you going to be looking at? What are some of your handicapping takeaways from Bristol? And give me a top 3 driver that you're looking at for this Sunday.
All right, I'm going to go back with Kevin Harvick again here. I've been on him about every race. Again, not one of his better tracks. Harvick's, he has 2 wins, 12 top 5 finishes. 19 top 10 finishes in 38 races here in Bristol. His average finish is 13.8 at this track, which isn't bad in 38 races. He's the hottest driver on the circuit still, even though he had 10th finish last night. He has 10 top 10 finishes his last 10 races and an average finish of 5.2 over that time. So I'm going to look at Harvick to do something here in Bristol.
Yeah, and if you look at like the last 4 races or last year's races, you're going to see some misleading results for him because he had a clutch problem and finished dead last in the August race last year, finished dead last 39th, but he was running 4th after stage 1. So a little misleading there. But yeah, Rocky, you're right. It's not one of his better tracks. I learned my lesson, of course, going against him last night on the intermediate speedway at Charlotte. With that said, though, he has been the best intermediate 1.5 mile driver on the circuit. Even though Charlotte wasn't his best track, it's not a surprise. I knew there was a lot of risk there. He has not been as good at Bristol, but he's still good on all tracks. This is a guy that's won at Richmond. I've seen him run well at Richmond, but he's not as dominant as he is on, say, the speedways and the super speedways. But yeah, and nothing surprises me with Harvick. Once again, a veteran driver, and as we saw last night, he knows how to get around these places, and he knows how to finish top 10. And once again, I don't think he's going to win this race. I would not use him on like maybe the outright odds at 10-1, whatever he's going to be when the odds come out. But head-to-head matchups, he's always a contender because he's so damn consistent. And other than that 39th place finish, last fall, he's in the running normally. He's usually a top 10. Now, I will say this. He finished 13th in the spring race. So he was outside the top 10 in both last year. And he did not even finish top 10 in either stage in the spring. So I'm not huge on Harvick, but once again, you were last race and you were exactly right and I was dead wrong. So buyer beware if you go against Harvick. I learned my lesson last night with that one. Andy, I'm sure you're not huge on Harvick. I heard you laughing. But who's a driver you do like at Bristol this Sunday?
Well, I think the H on Rocky's hat stands for Harvick.
I was wondering what it stood for. I'm going to give you an SJR hat.
Harvick hat. I have. First off, I want to go over a couple things because I know we have a lot of new NASCAR fans out there. At this track, don't bet a ton on the matchups. A lot can happen here. If something weird can happen, it will at this track. Over the last 4 races at Bristol, nobody averages a finish inside the top 6. It shows how volatile things can be. You can be leading and a lap car can bang into you. Only 5 guys average a finish inside the top 10 in the last 6 races. That's Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, Denny Hamlin, Kurt Busch, and Clint Boyer, of all people. So those are some guys to look at. You were talking about tracks to compare it. I think if you look at Phoenix, you'll see a lot of the same types of drivers up near the front. Because this track is a lot more about driving and handling than it is all-out horsepower. It's a track where guys in lesser cars can really compete with some of the top guys. Pit stops. You have to talk about pit stops. If you have to pit under green for like a loose tire or lug nut or something weird goes on your car, on these big tracks, you can come out 1 lap down or maybe even somehow sneak back on the lead lap. At Bristol, you'll be 2 or 3 laps down and your race is over. So pit stop strategy is huge. You cannot have a pit penalty. We see it every single race. At least one guy ends up 3 laps down because he was speeding through pit row. It's important to keep track of that on these short tracks. And it's really funny because it's pretty much impossible for a car to cross the finish line at the end without there being at least one big dent in the car. They are just constantly banging against each other and the wall. It's a blast. It's a great track to watch. It's a track I haven't seen in person, but I really wanted to. So when you're watching Bristol, I think my biggest piece of advice is don't go all in on some of these bets. There's just way too much volatility.
Yeah, and it's an excellent point. I'd say the most random race and the one I hate handicapping is Daytona, even though it's the Super Bowl of racing. Daytona and Talladega are the 2 super restrictor plate tracks where basically they run for 3 hours and all that matters is the last quarter of the last lap. And there's usually a big crash that sends it into overtime. Then there's another crash on the restart. It's basically flipping a coin. And it's ironic that the biggest track, Daytona, 2.5 miles, is the most random, along with the shortest track, Bristol, a 1/2 mile. But you're exactly right, Andy. It's an excellent point to bring up because these guys go around so many laps. By the way, it's 500 laps. The Food City 500 viewers is 500 laps. It's only 250 some miles. So from a fantasy perspective, where you get bonus points for laps led, this track is huge because they run more laps on this track than any other. They only ran 208 laps on Thursday at Charlotte. They're running 500 laps. So you're going to get 2 times more opportunities for bonus points. So you definitely want some drivers you think can lead laps from a fantasy perspective. From a betting perspective, though, yeah, one green flag pit stop, you're going to be several laps down and really kind of out of contention. With that said, though, we still have the usual suspects who do well here. Rocky, let me get another top 3 pick from you because you mentioned Harvick. Andy mentioned guys that have been consistent. In fact, the only guy that's been top 8 in the last 4 races is Clint Bowyer, his teammate. So Stewart-Haas Racing has run well here, even though I'm not big on Harvick this week. That team has run well. Eric Almirola has been okay here at times, but Andy brings up a great point. Almirola's had some pit penalties recently. He's just one of those guys that can't run a clean race, and that just kills you here at a track like Bristol. So it's a little surprising Bowyer's been so clean. Maybe that's an overreaction to recent results. Maybe he's due for an off night here, but he runs well at Richmond. I've been at track races at Richmond where he's been the winner, been contenders. So a guy like Bowyer who has a dirt background, dirt racing on short tracks, does very well here also. Rocky, who's another guy you like for top 3 this week at Bristol?
Like Joey Logano. I know Andy mentioned him. He has 2 wins, 6 top 5 finishes, 10 top 10 finishes in his 22 races here in Bristol. His average finish is 15.1 at this track. Over the past 2 years, Logano has 3 top 10 finishes in the 4 races here in Bristol, and he has an average finish of 8.0. So I'm going to be looking for Logano to be near the front again here in Bristol.
Yeah, he was a guy that jumped out to me when I was looking at the recent results at Bristol. Definitely one of my top 3 or 4 drivers for this race. And he's finished better than Keselowski in almost all of them recently, except this past fall, Keselowski did finish 3rd. Be careful, though. Like Andy says, Keselowski always finds a way to finish top 5, top 10. Keselowski and Harvick are probably the 2 most consistent drivers on the circuit that get the most out of their runs every week. And even the ones that he's finished behind Logano, he's been running top stage points and other things have happened. So be careful leaving Keselowski off, even though his results maybe don't look great. But Logano's results have been fantastic. And, Logano and Bowyer were 2 guys that jumped out to me when I looked at the numbers in recent results at Bristol. Viewers, this is a bonus Friday show because they had 2 races this week. So we don't have odds out yet, as we mentioned. We definitely don't have the matchups. We don't even have the matchup templates. Who's going to be matched up against each other. So what I thought we'd do on this show is we'll keep doing our top picks like we always do. But in a moment, instead of doing the free head-to-head matchup, we're going to do a play-against driver or 2. So you guys are going to have a ton of free information here. You're going to have several play-on drivers, a couple play-against guys. We're going to give out some sleeper picks, too. I've got one that I'm afraid one of you might steal, but I'm going to wait to hear yours in a moment, and then I'll give mine. But there's a guy that's a great sleeper pick for this track. I'm actually really excited to use him this week. Hopefully we get some matchups with him. He's not even always on the matchup board. But I want to remind the viewers also, 5-0 sweep last night in the Charlotte race for these 2 handicappers. You missed out. That's a tough break, but there's still 4.5 months of NASCAR remaining, and you can get a huge special price. Yes, you missed a 5-0 sweep, but you're going to get a discounted price now when you sign up, so it works out just as well. You see what these guys can do on the track, off the track, here on the show. $249. $249 gets you the next 4.5 months of NASCAR, every race, every pick for the rest of the season. Rocky's picks are at sportsmemo.com, sportsmemo.com for Rocky Atkinson. Andy Lang's picks at WagerTalk.com, WagerTalk.com for Andy's picks. $249 for the rest of the NASCAR season, but you got to do it before this Sunday's green flag drops at Bristol. Andy, give me one more driver you're looking at as maybe a top 3, a guy you might be using in some head-to-head matchups at Bristol.
I was so mad at myself. I mean, I said it last week that people are going to think about fading Denny Hamlin because he loses his crew chief and his car chief and 2 other guys, and then there he is in 2nd place. Unfortunately, I think the cat might be out of the bag on that one. We might not have value. I'll look at a guy like Kurt Busch, whose car has not looked good on the big tracks, but always drives good here on the short tracks. Most guys grew up driving these short tracks, but he really excels. We call it a root and gouge type of track where you really got to put it hard into the corner, and it doesn't require the type of horsepower and the handling that the bigger tracks require. So he's going to have a completely different setup on his car, and I look for him to be up near the front.
Yeah, Kyle is someone I mentioned earlier. So this is probably his best track, but I'm glad you brought up Kurt Busch, and I just added that to the comments. Actually, the Busch brothers combined have been as good, if not better, than every other driver on the circuit at Bristol. So they obviously know how to get around here. Kurt's been good here for over a decade with several different teams. And he ran well the last few seasons when he was with Stewart Haas. Once again, we mentioned Harvick not great here, but that team has been very good. Bowyer and Kurt Busch especially. And here's something else I want to point out. The best driver other than maybe Kyle Busch the last couple of years has been Kyle Larson on this track. He was running the 42, which is teammates with Kurt Busch's current car, the 1. Matt Kenseth is now in the 42. Be interesting to see how Kenseth runs this week. I'm not huge on him. I like the matchup of Reddick over Kenseth last night at Charlotte that paid off. Kenseth looked really good finishing 10th in that first Darlington race. He's barely been top 20 in the other 3 races since then. He's had some problems. But the 42 car has been very good, and that team was very good. So I think Kurt Busch is once again a great pick here in the 1 car, as he's been great on the track, and this team has shown they run well here as also. I'll tell you what, guys, let's do a long shot pick each, and then we'll do a place driver. So, Rocky, give me another guy you're looking at. Maybe not one of the top 5 or 10 favorites, but someone you think has a lot of value here.
Just to mention, I like that Kurt Busch pick. Definitely, it was one of my top 3. As far as a long shot, just mentioned my long shot here this week, Matt Kenseth. Kenseth's got 4 wins, 15 top 5 finishes, 22 top 10 finishes in 36 races here in Bristol in his career. His average finish 13.6 here at this track, which is 5th best among all active drivers. He knows how to get around this track, and this could be the race his name gets called a lot for being at the front of the pack. So my long shot's going to be Matt Kenseth. I don't know his odds right now, but it's probably going to be double digits. So I'm looking for Kenseth to run good here.
Oh, yeah, it most certainly will be double digits. In fact, I would say based on how he's run the last few races, he might not even be a top 10 driver in the odds. So I would say at least 20-1 or higher would be my guess, if not more. He's going to start. I believe this is the starting order, guys. They did a random draw here. They took the top 12 guys for the top 12 spots, random draw, then 13 through 26 or 24. If this is the current starting order, which I believe it is, I'm looking at one of the websites today. Brad Keselowski looks like he has the pole. Almirola is 2nd, Logano 3rd, Blaney 4th, Truex 5th, Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch, Harvick, Dibenedetto, Hamlin, Bowman, and Kurt Busch 12th. That'd be your top 12. And then Matt Kenseth is 14th, Rocky. So it's a good starting spot for you, where you'll probably get very good odds still because of that starting spot, but it's very doable. He's not starting, say, like 30th, which would have been a concern. By the way, guys, look at the order here quickly. Clint Bowyer starting 23rd, Jimmy Johnson 24th. So a little bit of concern having Bowyer that far back, even though I do like him on this track. Andy, who's a guy for you, a little bit of a sleeper pick at Bristol this Sunday?
Before I get to my sleeper, I did want to bring up this stat. He's plus 1,600 to win the race. The 2 races here last year, the guy with the best average running position during green flag laps was actually Ryan Blaney. He was running an average of 5.7. And honestly, he's looked like the best Penske car overall. He was great last night. He was great the race before. He's really looked good. So Blaney would be one. I'll give you 2 real quick, and then I'm always happy to bet on Ryan Newman on a short track. He just knows how to save his brakes, save his tires, and he's a guy that just randomly will end up in 10th. He knows how to navigate traffic really good. He was voted as the hardest driver to pass for NASCAR drivers, which is pretty much the biggest badge of honor you can have in NASCAR. Last 2 races last year, finished 9th and 11th. I'm going to hope to get a good head-to-head matchup with him. He's a good sleeper for me. But my big sleeper is Matt Dibenedetto. He's plus 4,000 to win.
You stole it. I knew one of you would steal it. That was my man.
Oh, sorry. I think I stole both your guys' thunder. So I'll give him the stats. That way you guys can scramble and find another one. He had that incredible duel with Denny Hamlin last year. It's kind of when he became a real fan favorite. Came in 2nd. He was in a horrible car last year. I still don't know how he finished 2nd in that race, let alone was leading a bunch of laps. But he's in a much better car this year. And this is a guy that I mentioned earlier, some of the guys in lesser cars can compete with the guys in better cars. This is a track to do it on. So I'll look to maybe sprinkle Dibenedetto in some matchups.
Yeah, no, Dibenedetto has been just a sleeper all season long, and that's exactly who I was referencing earlier. He finished 2nd in the race last year at Bristol, as you mentioned, in the fall. But he also was strong in the spring, finishing 12th. He started 21st. Much weaker team. By the way, that was the 95 car, which is now Christopher Bell's car, which is another guy that, Andy, you've been talking about, and I agree with you. I think he's a potential play-on guy this season. Might be tough to use him this week, although he was a great short-track racer. He won one of the virtual outlaw races back in early April that I watched on TV, and he has a good short-track background and a good truck background. He was really good in the truck series. So I'm going to dig into his stats from the other series. I haven't done yet at Bristol, but I have a feeling he probably runs well here. So, and that 95 car, like you said, with Dibenedetto did nothing last year except this track in that car. So they were a sleeper pick. So I'll throw out Christopher Bell maybe as someone to look into for that reason. But yeah, I love Dibenedetto this weekend. He's been great on this track with lesser cars, and he's been in a really strong car this year. He had that bad luck at the second at the Charlotte the 600. Yeah, when they qualified, he had that start all the way at the back of the pack. Still got all the way up there. He had been top 20 every other race this season. One of the only other drivers other than Harvick, I think, to do so this year. So that's how consistent he's been. So that's an excellent sleeper pick. And we usually get maybe one head-to-head matchup with him. So hopefully we'll get a little bit more action this week. Yeah, those are great sleepers. I'm glad you brought up Ryan Blaney also. He's a guy that jumped out to me when I was doing my research. As we mentioned, Logano's been very strong here. Keselowski's been okay, but Blaney's been great. So Team Penske looks like the strongest team here. We've been talking about Hendrick on these fast mile-and-a-half tracks, but I think Penske is the team to beat this weekend, as all three of them are live contenders. All right, I'm going to give my sleeper first because I know one of you might steal this, so I'm going to give it out first. But my play against driver is what I meant. My sleeper was Dibenedetto also. Play against is William Byron for several reasons. First of all, I don't think he's finished better than 16th in any of his 4 starts the last 2 years here. He's still a young driver. And as we've seen in these other tracks where he's very fast with the best team and in contention, he still finds a way to finish outside the top 10, top 20, even when running well. As Andy referenced earlier, you can't be making mistakes at Bristol because you'll be a couple laps down right away on the half mile. So very hard for me to back Byron. I'll be looking to play against him in head-to-head matchups this weekend. Rocky, who's a play against driver or two for you?
Well, I hadn't seen the starting lineup until you just told us. So Martin Truex is starting 5th.
Yeah, Truex is 5th. And by the way, guys, Blaney, who Andy mentioned, is 4th. And Dibenedetto is 9th. And then Byron, who I mentioned as a play against, is starting 13th. Who are you looking at, Rocky? I'll let you know where they're starting.
So I'm going to recommend fading Martin Truex Jr. here. I think we're going to get some real good odds with him starting 5th and just by his name because he's one of the better drivers on the circuit, but this is not his track. He has no wins, only 2 top 5 finishes, and only 3 top 10 finishes in 28 races here in Bristol. His average finish is 20.6 at this track. Over the past 2 years, Truex Jr. has no wins, no top 5 finishes, no top 10 finishes in those 4 races, where he has an average finish of 22.5 over the past 2 years here in Bristol. So he's definitely a guy I'm going to be looking to fade here this weekend.
Yeah, I like it. Truex is probably as good as any driver on the circuit, and he's been good at Richmond, by the way. Very good at Richmond, but he has not been very good at Bristol. So that once again shows that maybe Richmond's not a great comparison. I mentioned that earlier. Kyle Busch and Boyer have both been great at Richmond. They're great on this track, but for some reason it hasn't translated as much for Truex. And, yeah, this is the one week if you're going to leave him off your card, I would agree it would be the week to do so. Andy, who's a play against driver for you? Maybe a guy you're looking to fade in the matchups when the odds come out.
You mentioned Erik Jones. Last 3 races, his average finish is 32.3. He's starting to become a real just disappointing guy. I expect a lot more from him in that car. My fade, I really like going against guys that overachieve in races, and not to pile on, but Ricky Stenhouse's average finish last 3 races is 30th. He's not good at short tracks. He really, really seems to struggle on these types of tracks. And coming off a 3rd place finish, I think the books are going to look at that and go, oh, wow, third place. This guy must be good. And no doubt his car was ready to rock. His team did a great job. He did a great job. But I'm going to be happy to fade him where he struggles on the short tracks. And I think this is where you're going to get value, where the books just look at pure results from the last few races, and they're not looking at track type. They're not looking at too much of the history and some of the ways that I handicap. So I'll take fading Stenhouse off of probably his best performance of the year.
Yeah, he finished fourth in this race back in 2018. And he started fourth and finished fourth. So he had a good starting spot, was able to hold the fourth place. But then right after that in the fall, started 12th, finished 24th. And then last year, started 19th, finished 33rd, and started 15th and finished 33rd. So, yeah, I think you're onto something there. You never know. You can catch the lightning in a bottle. Like you said, this is a bit of a random track, so he could have that one good run. Hey, look, if you lose that matchup this time, you gain it back in the fall by going against him even heavier, because there's no way he'll run good in both races at Bristol this year. So probably not a bad call there. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Once again, remind all the viewers out that we'll be back at our normal time this Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern, for our next preview of the next race here on our NASCAR Life in the Fast Lane Handicapping Show. And another reminder, it's your last chance before the green flag drops at Bristol this Sunday to get $249 for the rest of the NASCAR season. Tremendous discounted price. You've seen what these guys can do with their best bets. You hear their knowledge here on the show. Now build your bankroll with that knowledge for the rest of the NASCAR season. You got over 4.5 months of remaining NASCAR best bets from Andy Lang at WagerTalk.com and Rocky Atkinson at SportsMemo.com. 5-0 sweep last night on their best bets on those two sites. Get the rest of the season for $249 complete, and you have to do it by this Sunday before the Bristol race starts. Andy Lang at WagerTalk.com, Rocky Atkinson at SportsMemo.com. You guys, great show as always. Great information. I appreciate it. And we'll be back this Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern live here on this channel. Take care.
All right. Good stuff, Rocky.
Thank you. You too, bud.
That's so weird without having the matchups in front of you.
Yeah, I know. Are we still recording, you think?
No, I think they probably